The Earthborn who wouldn't finish the kill. The underground arena of Traxxas Prime smelled of sweat, fear, and blood. The air was heavy and damp, and the roar of the alien crowd shook the walls like a storm trapped inside stone. Above, dim lights swayed, throwing moving shadows over the sand. In the center stood Marcus Kane, tall, scarred, and bare-chested, his fists clenched and his breathing steady. He had fought in this pit many times before, and each time he survived, he earned another. Day of Life, the crowd called him the Earthborn Executioner, though he hated the name. It was not execution that kept him alive, but control, patience, and the refusal to kill when killing was not needed. Across from him stood his opponent, a draconian beast twice his size, its scaled skin glimmering under the lights. The creature bared sharp teeth and let out a hiss that made the crowd scream for blood. The announcer's voice boomed from speakers, introducing Marcus with exaggerated flair. The crowd cheered louder, stamping their feet and slamming their claws against the rails. But Marcus did not smile, he did not wave, he simply rolled his shoulders, feeling the tug of old scars along his back. Scars left by whips, claws, and years of fighting. The bell clanged, and the draconian charged, claws raised like knives. Marcus stepped to the side with calm ease, letting the beast's momentum carry. It passed. The sand shifted under his feet, but his balance never broke. He had learned in 3 long years that finesse mattered more than brute force. The draconian stumbled, confused for a second, and Marcus struck at the back of its knee joint. The alien roared in pain and swung wildly, but Marcus was already gone, moving like water slipping between rocks. Every move he made was calculated, every strike precise. He hit pressure points, joints, and weak spots, never wasting energy. The fight looked brutal to the crowd, but to Marcus it was a rhythm, a cold dance of survival. The arena was his cage, and every step was practice in how to live one more day. "Finish him," someone screamed, their voice breaking through the chaos. The demand rolled across the crowd like a wave, thousands of throats chanting for blood. Marcus ignored them, his eyes locked on the draconian who now struggled to breathe. The beast's claws slowed, its movements heavy, its strength draining away. Marcus saw the moment of surrender before it happened. The draconian's eyes shifted, from fury to fear, from predator to prey. And then, with trembling claws, the alien tapped the ground 3 times, the universal sign of yielding. The crowd erupted, half of them furious, the other half cheering. Some shouted for death, others admired the skill. But Marcus only stepped back, his chest rising and falling, refusing to give the audience what they wanted. He had killed before when no choice remained, but never for the entertainment of others. Killing didn't pay more, and killing never ended the cycle. The announcer declared, his victory, his voice rising high. "The Earthborn Executioner remains undefeated," he roared. Handlers rushed in to drag the draconian's body out, while Marcus stood tall, sweat dripping down his arms and chest. A cut above his brow bled into his eye, and he wiped it away with the back of his hand. Then, through the glare of the lights, he saw her. A flash of violet eyes watching from the VIP section, not jeering, not clapping, only watching. It was the alien woman with pale blue skin and hair white as frost. Her gaze was calm but sharp, like a blade sheathed in silk, and for the first time in years Marcus felt the crowd fade away, leaving only those violet eyes. He turned toward the exit, the noise of the pit rumbling behind him. His body ached, but his mind was steady. Another fight survived. Another week of food bought with blood. But that look from the alien woman followed him, a reminder that someone had seen more than just the fight. Someone had seen him. Outside the pit, the air was cooler, but no cleaner. The tunnels smelled of oil, rust, and the damp stone of a world that never cared for men like him. Marcus walked with slow steps, feeling the familiar ache in his shoulders. He carried no pride in victory, only the weight of survival. But as he reached the end of the tunnel, he stopped, because he knew her eyes would not leave him tonight. And though he told himself to forget, a voice inside whispered that fate had already decided otherwise. 10 lashes and a quiet sky. The marketplace of Traxxas Prime was alive with noise and color. Merchants shouted over one another, selling fruit that glowed, metals that hummed, and trinkets stolen from forgotten worlds. The air was heavy with spice, smoke, and the restless energy of a colony always on the edge of revolt. Marcus moved through the crowd with his hood low, ignoring the stares. He came only for medicine, a small vial to ease the burn of wounds from last night's fight. Nothing more, nothing less. Survival and silence were his only goals, but silence shattered when a voice cut across the square. A melodic, firm, unmistakable voice. Issa Nixian, the alien woman from the arena, stood tall before a group of armored colonial officers. Her pale blue skin gleamed in the sun, her white hair whipping in the dry wind. Behind her, attendants trembled, but Issa herself did not move. She argued with the reptilian officer in charge, his scaled face sneering as he dismissed her words. Her voice rose above the marketplace noise, carrying both strength and defiance. "These taxes are illegal under the Galactic Compact. The people need medicine, not chains," she declared. The officer laughed, his sharp teeth flashing. He waved, his clawed hand, and the crowd stirred uneasily. The people had seen this before, dissent crushed under boots. Then a ripple moved through the marketplace as Commander Draylock appeared. Tall, crimson-scaled, draped in military insignia, his yellow eyes cold as knives. His very presence silenced the crowd, as if the air itself bent to his will. "Lady Isa," he said softly, always so eager to test the patience of colonial law. He gestured lazily, and guards seized her arms. The crowd gasped, but none dared step forward. 10 lashes, Draylock announced, his voice calm, almost bored. "Let this be a lesson." The neural whip appeared, a cruel weapon designed not to kill, but to carve pain into memory. The guards forced Issa to her knees, her attendants begging, only to be struck aside. The marketplace became a stage, and the people became unwilling witnesses. Issa lifted her chin, violet eyes burning with pride, refusing to show fear. She would endure, she would not bend. But the lash would still tear her, mark her, break her body, even if not her spirit. And that was when Marcus moved. He didn't think. He didn't plan. His body carried him forward before his mind argued to stop. The crowd parted, shocked, as the human from the arena stepped into the open. His hood fell back, his scarred face revealed, eyes hard as stone. "Stop," he said, his voice low but cutting like thunder. The entire square froze. Issa's eyes widened in recognition. The fighter who refused to kill now stood for her. Draylock tilted his head, amused. "This doesn't concern you, fighter," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Marcus's gaze never left Isa, not Draylock, not the whip, only her. "I'll take her punishment," he said simply. Gasps rippled through the crowd, disbelief shaking them awake. A human offering to take lashes meant for a noble alien. Why? Draylock asked, curious now, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "You don't even know her." Marcus met Isa's gaze again, and something unspoken passed between them. A silent bond forged not in words but in choice. "I would," Marcus replied, his voice steady as stone. For a moment silence ruled. Then Draylock's smile widened, cruel and sharp. "Very well," he said. "Let's give the people their show." The guards seized Marcus, tearing away his shirt, exposing a back already scarred like a battlefield. Issa struggled, her voice sharp. "No, this is not his burden, this is mine." But Draylock only laughed. "Too late, noble lady, your champion has made his choice." The whip cracked and the first lash fell. Marcus's body jolted, the fire ripping across his skin. The second came, then the third, each strike like molten steel. But he did not scream. He did not give the crowd the sound they craved. By the fifth lash, blood ran freely down his back, his vision blurred, but he stayed silent. The crowd shifted, shock spreading through them. They had seen warriors break, aliens collapse, men cry out. But this human endured, each lash striking, flesh but failing to break spirit. Issa's violet eyes shone with horror and something else, something deeper. Gratitude, respect, a thread of connection pulled tight in the fire of pain. By the ninth lash, Marcus swayed, his body trembling, but his jaw stayed clenched. The final strike tore across his back, blood spraying, silence heavier than screams. And then, slowly, Marcus stood, his back a canvas of agony, his eyes burning, not with defeat but defiance. The crowd was silent, stunned, reverent even. They had not witnessed pain, they had witnessed will. Drelock smirked, though his eyes betrayed unease. "Impressive," he muttered. "Perhaps the colonial forces could use such resilience." "Go to hell," Marcus growled, his voice hoarse but unbroken. The commander laughed, waving his hand. "Release the woman. Her debt is paid." The guards freed Issa, but Marcus barely heard them, the pain a storm threatening to consume him. Then Issa was at his side, her cool hands steadying his burning skin. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this for me?" Marcus met her gaze, his breath ragged, his body broken, but his words simple. "Someone had to," he said. The crowd did not cheer, they did not jeer, they only watched. Because in that moment, they had seen something greater than survival. They had seen courage. And for the first time in years, the sky over Traxxas Prime felt quiet. The kneel, the door, and the offer. The night after the lashes was long and heavy. Marcus sat in the shadows of his small room. The walls cracked, the air damp with the stench of rust and old smoke. His back was raw, every breath sending fire through his body, the whip wounds still bleeding where the cloth had stuck. He cleaned them with rough hands, dipping a rag in bitter water and pressing it against his skin. Each press burned, but he had lived long enough to know pain was just another companion, one that never left. The crowd's silence still echoed in his mind. Not the noise, not the lashes, but the silence. The moment when thousands of voices who had demanded blood could only watch a human stand against agony. That silence would follow him, and perhaps it would destroy him. Yet even as he wrapped his wounds, he remembered Issa's violet eyes, the way they had burned with horror and gratitude. He should have forgotten them, forgotten her. But he could not. A sharp knock rattled his door, breaking the stillness. Marcus froze, his hand reaching for the blade he kept hidden under the table. No one visited him. No one even knew his exact dwelling, and those who did never knocked. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice rough. The reply was deep and formal. "House Nixian." Marcus hesitated, his scars aching with memory of the day. Slowly, he opened the door, and his breath caught. Two towering figures stood before him, armored in steel-colored plates marked with intricate symbols, their faces pale blue like Issa's. Their violet eyes glowed faintly under the corridor's light, and their presence made the broken room feel even smaller. Between them stood Issa herself, no longer in her torn market clothes, but dressed in sleek attire lined with silver trim, her hair braided with care. Her gaze softened when it fell on him, though her voice carried command. "May we enter?" Marcus stepped back reluctantly, blade still in hand, though he knew it would do little against them. The two warriors entered first, their movements disciplined, scanning every corner of his meager home. Then Issa followed, her presence filling the room more than the armored giants. "Marcus Kane," she said, her tone both formal and warm. "These are my brothers, Theron and Kairos Nixian." The warriors inclined their heads, their strength obvious in the way they moved, every step deliberate, every gesture measured. Up close, Marcus saw the resemblance, the same sharp cheekbones, the same faint glow to their eyes, the same quiet dignity. Theron, the taller of the two, stepped forward, his voice deep. "Our sister has told us of your actions," he said. "You took lashes meant for her, though you had no bond, no oath, no reason to do so." Marcus shifted, uncomfortable with their piercing stares. "It wasn't right," he said simply. "She was standing for people who couldn't stand for themselves." The brothers exchanged a glance, silent words passing between them. Then, to Marcus's shock, they dropped to one knee in unison, their armored fists pressed against the floor, their heads lowered in formal respect. House Nixian warriors, noble blood kneeling in his broken, filthy room, Kiros spoke, his voice firm but reverent. "House Nixian honors its debts. You shed blood for our sister's honor. And in our culture, no act holds greater weight. Marcus froze, his heart pounding. He had faced monsters in the pit, tyrants in the square. But this, two alien nobles kneeling before him, this unsettled him more than any battle. "Stand," he said quickly, almost uneasy. "That's not necessary." "It is our way," Theron replied, his eyes rising to meet Marcus's. "You have earned our respect and our loyalty." Issa stepped closer, her presence radiating calm power. "My brothers have come with an invitation," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "Our father, Lord Nixian, requests your presence at our family compound." Marcus blinked, suspicion flickering across his scarred face. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't think walking into noble politics is wise," he muttered. "Draylock already wants me dead." Issa's voice softened, but her eyes grew sharper. "And that is precisely why you should accept," she said. "Alone, you are a target. With us, you are protected." She moved closer, close enough for him to catch the faint scent of her, exotic and cool like night-blooming flowers. Her words carried weight, but her proximity carried something else, something unspoken. "You need us," she whispered. "And perhaps, though you do not yet admit it, we need you." Cairo straightened, his tone diplomatic. "Our family has interests that align with your strength," he said. "You fight with restraint and honor, rare qualities in this pit." Theron added, "Our father believes you may have a role beyond survival." Marcus studied them, suspicion still heavy, but a spark of curiosity burned through it. Staying meant facing Draylock's retribution alone. Going meant stepping into an alien world of politics, power, and danger. But as his gaze locked with Issa's once more, he found himself leaning toward the unknown. "When do we leave?" he asked finally. Issa's lips curved into the faintest smile, relief flashing in her violet eyes. "Immediately," she said. "Bring only what you need." Marcus gathered the few possessions he had, a blade, a worn coat, a pouch of credits, nothing else. As he turned, Issa's hand brushed his arm, her touch cool and deliberate. Her voice dropped, soft enough that only he could hear. "Why did you really take those lashes?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Marcus met her gaze, his words quiet but steady. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said, then added, "and because something about you, I couldn't watch you fall." Issa's fingers lingered, on his arm, her violet eyes darkening with emotion. "Humans," she whispered almost to herself, "always more dangerous than they appear." The moment stretched, charged and fragile. Then Theron cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Our transport awaits," he said firmly. Marcus stepped toward the door, Issa walking at his side, their shoulders almost touching. And as he left his broken room behind, Marcus felt it. The line had been crossed, the choice made. Whatever waited at the Nixian compound would change his life forever. Masks and knives. 3 days after Marcus left his broken room, he no longer looked like a man of the pits. House Nixian's healers had tended his wounds with precision, salves glowing faintly as they closed torn flesh, leaving scars but not weakness. They dressed him in tailored black cloth with metallic edges, a mix of human and Nixian style, sharp yet practical. When he studied himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the reflection. Gone was the battered fighter who lived meal to meal. In his place stood something else, not yet noble, not yet soldier, but no longer just a survivor. The door slid open, and Issa entered. She wore a gown of midnight blue, flowing like water, each movement catching the light and scattering it across her pale skin. Her violet eyes lingered on him, a spark of amusement there. "You clean up better than I expected," she said softly. Marcus gave a half smile, awkward but genuine. "And you look," he searched for words, "beyond anything I could put in words." Her lips curved faintly, and for a heartbeat, her gaze softened. But then her tone turned sharper, controlled. "Tonight is not for words. Tonight is for power. The transport carried them toward the heart of the colonial district. The city above the slums was another world, its towers gleaming, streets lined with banners, guards in polished armor. Marcus watched from the viewport, his jaw tight. Wealth, built on suffering, always left a taste like ash. Theron and Kairos briefed them as they neared their destination. "Show no fear," Theron said. "Every eye will watch how you stand. Every whisper will measure Issa by the human at her side." Kairos added, "And remember, Draylock is a viper. He will smile as he poisons." The reception hall glowed with chandeliers of alien crystal, walls hung with banners of colonial power. Guests in silks and metals turned when Marcus entered beside Issa. The sight of a human walking as her escort was enough to still the air for a moment. Some sneered, some whispered, some watched in silence. Marcus felt every gaze like a weight pressing against his back. Issa leaned close, her cool voice reaching only him. "They fear what they do not understand. Let them. Fear is a kind of respect." Colonial officials approached with masks of courtesy. Issa moved through them with practiced ease, her voice calm, her words sharp. Marcus walked a half-step behind, silent, scanning every face, every hand near a weapon. Some aliens bowed, others looked away, but Marcus noticed one thing. Every single one of them glanced at him, measuring the human who stood where no human had stood before. Then the room chilled. Commander Draylock entered, crimson scales gleaming, yellow eyes cutting through the crowd like blades. Conversations faltered, drinks froze mid-air. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, his officers parting the crowd. Like predators moving through prey. "Lady Issa," Draylock said smoothly. "So bold to come after our little disagreement." Issa smiled faintly, her voice silk over steel. "Boldness is often mistaken for truth, Commander." Draylock's gaze shifted to Marcus, his teeth flashing in something that was not quite a smile. "And your human pet," he hissed softly. "A mascot for your house." Marcus held his stare, his voice calm. "Better a pet with teeth than a commander who hides behind whips." Gasps rippled through the hall. Draylock's smile faltered, but only for a moment. He leaned close, his voice low enough for Marcus. "Alone. When House Nixian falls, I'll make sure you crawl back into the pit where you belong." Before Issa could reply, an official approached, whispering urgently into Draylock's ear. The commander gave them a final look of venom and turned away. Issa exhaled, her hand brushing Marcus's arm. "You held your ground," she whispered. "That was enough." But the night was not finished. Their transport lifted them from the reception, stars glittering beyond the city skyline. Issa sat beside Marcus, her hand resting lightly on his. "Draylock will strike sooner than later," she said. "Tonight was not the end." Marcus opened his mouth to reply, but the words never came. The transport jolted violently, alarms shrieking. An explosion rocked the cabin, smoke filling the air. "Under attack!" the pilot shouted, his voice strained. Marcus pulled Issa close instinctively as the vessel banked hard, streaks of plasma fire tearing past the windows. Two pursuit craft, sleek and black, closed in, their weapons flashing. "Colonial markings," Kairos cursed. Draylock wasted no time. The transport dived toward the canyon below, stone walls rushing past. Marcus's heart hammered, but his mind was cold, calculating. He spotted the narrow turns, the unstable rock formations. "They're faster but heavier," he shouted. "Take us into the canyon, force them to crash." The pilot obeyed, and the vessel scraped along stone as it twisted through impossible turns. One pursuer clipped a ridge and spun out, crashing in a fireball, but the second stayed, relentless. Its fire tore into their rear section, alarms screaming, engines dying. "We can't outrun them," Theron shouted, his hand gripping the side rail. "We don't need to," Marcus said. Already reaching for the weapon Kairos shoved into his hand, he checked the strange pistol, feeling its weight. "Point and pull," Kairos explained curtly. Marcus gave a grim smile. "That I can do." The transport shuddered, then crashed onto a plateau, metal screeching against stone. The crew spilled out into the night, smoke billowing behind them. The remaining pursuit craft hovered above, lowering 6 figures in colonial armor, their weapons drawn. Assassins, not soldiers. Sent to kill without record. Marcus crouched behind stone. Issa beside him, her breath steady despite the danger. "Stay down," he told her, his eyes scanning the enemy's approach. She gripped his arm, her voice calm but sharp. "You cannot protect me by dying, Marcus Kane." He gave a thin smile, blood from the crash running down his brow. "I don't plan on dying," he said, his gaze locked on the assassins closing in. "Not tonight." Blood in the canyon. The wrecked transport hissed behind them, smoke curling into the alien night. The canyon walls rose high on all sides, jagged stone catching the glow of fire. Marcus crouched low, staff-like weapon in his hands, his muscles aching from lashes not yet healed. His breath sharp but steady. Across the plateau, 6 armored assassins advanced, their visors blank, their movements silent. Too silent. These were not soldiers bound by orders. These were killers sent to erase. Theron and Kiros took positions behind boulders, their rifles humming with charge. Issa crouched close to Marcus, her gown torn, her white hair streaked with soot, yet her violet eyes calm, her voice carried in a whisper. "They are not here to frighten. They are here to finish." Marcus gave a thin smile, his scars burning. "Then we make them regret it." The assassins fanned out, blades and guns glinting under the canyon's pale light. They moved with precision, trained to encircle, to cut escape. But Marcus had seen this rhythm before, in the pits where death circled like vultures. He knew the pattern of killers who thought themselves hunters, and he had survived too long by becoming the unexpected. One assassin broke from the group, sweeping wide. His gun raised, Marcus slid into the shadows, his body low against the rock, moving like smoke. The pit had taught him silence, had taught him how to breathe with the dust. The assassin never saw the blade until it touched his throat. A swift strike, efficient and final. The body dropped into the dark without sound. Marcus took the fallen man's weapon, sleek and heavy, more advanced than what Kiros had given him. Now armed, he circled behind the others, the hunter becoming the ghost. The remaining assassins engaged Theron and Kiros, energy fire sparking across stone. The Nixian brothers fought with discipline, pinning 2 targets down, but the others pressed closer, relentless. Marcus raised the stolen rifle and fired, the shot striking true into the leader's shoulder, sparks flying as armor cracked. The commander stumbled, his men faltering without his signal. In battle, hesitation was a wound, and Marcus cut into it. He charged, slamming his staff across one assassin's knees. The sound of bone and metal snapping echoing through the canyon. The man dropped with a scream, silenced as Marcus's blade struck clean. Another turned, weapon raised, but Issa herself moved, her hand flicking with a small, sharp device. A burst of violet light erupted, striking the assassin square in the chest, throwing him back against stone. Marcus glanced at her, surprise flickering, but Issa only whispered, "Nixian nobles are not as helpless as they appear." The fight raged, fire and light tearing through the night. Marcus ducked a shot, rolled across stone, his staff rising to strike an attacker's jaw with brutal force. Blood sprayed, and the assassin crumpled. Theron's rifle sang, precise and lethal, dropping another. Kiros covered the flank, his heavy, frame-blocking shots meant for Issa, his fire relentless. Soon only the commander remained, his crimson-marked armor sparking with damage, his blade still sharp. He roared and charged, faster than his size should allow. Marcus met him head-on, their weapons clashing, sparks flying in the canyon dark. The commander's strength was brutal, each strike enough to break bone. But Marcus had lived years against beasts twice his size. He slipped inside the man's guard, his movements fast, feral, pit-born. The final blow came when Marcus spun his staff low, slamming into the commander's unarmored knee. The alien fell, and Marcus pressed the staff across his throat, breath ragged, eyes burning. "Yield!" Marcus growled, his voice sharp as iron. The assassin spat blood, laughing even as he choked. "Draylock will grind you into ash, human," he hissed. Marcus pressed harder, fury rising, but Issa's voice cut through the haze. "Enough, Marcus." she said firmly, her cool hand brushing his shoulder, steadying him. We need one alive for answers. The commander sneered, but said nothing, his silence as deliberate as his orders. Theron bound him with chains crackling, with energy dragging him toward the smoldering wreck. Kairos retrieved what supplies he could, his face grim. They will send more, he warned, his voice low. Drelok is tightening the noose. Isa stepped close to Marcus, her violet eyes studying the blood streaked across his face. You fight like no one I have seen, she whispered, a trace of wonder in her tone. Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice quiet. It's not fighting, it's surviving. Her gaze softened, her fingers brushing the scarred line of his jaw. Surviving can still inspire, she murmured. The plateau fell silent again, the echoes of battle fading into the cold wind. Above them, the stars glittered sharp, indifferent, but Marcus knew Drelok's eyes were on them still, from somewhere. Waiting. This was not the end, not even close. It was only the first blood in a much larger war. The siege and the challenge. At dawn, the Nixian compound trembled beneath the shadow of war. From the command center's high windows, Marcus counted the ships blotting out the sky, a fleet of crimson-marked vessels settling into position around the estate. Colonial banners unfurled in the morning wind, their presence heavy as a noose tightening around a neck. The compound's defenders lined the walls, armor gleaming, weapons charged, but even Marcus could see it. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outflanked. Lord Nixian stood at the central console, his tall frame tense but composed. His violet eyes scanned the holographic display, a map of their world now lit with enemy signals. Drelok has cut off all official escape routes, he said, his voice grim. His siege is complete. Theron cursed under his breath. Kairos's jaw tightened, but Marcus said nothing, his eyes narrowing, watching the commander's tactics unfold like a net he had seen many times in the pits. Only this net was for an entire house, not a single. Man, Isa stepped forward, her voice sharp. Father, we must send the evidence now. The records of Drelok's corruption, the slavery, the theft, the crimes. Lord Nixian shook his head, his long white braids swaying. He has blocked all transmissions. Nothing leaves Traxxas Prime, not unless carried by hand through his fleet. Silence weighed heavy, the kind that pressed into lungs and hearts. Then Marcus spoke, his voice low but cutting. Then we give him what he wants. All eyes turned to him. Warriors, nobles, Isa herself, her brows furrowed. And, what is that? She asked, her tone wary. Me, Marcus said, his scarred face hard in the pale light. He doesn't care about your family's crimes or laws. He cares about pride, about power, about the fact a human stood against him and lived. Kairos shook his head sharply. You would walk into his grasp, you would die. Marcus met his glare without flinching. Not if I call him out. Not if I challenge him. Trial by combat. The words cracked through the chamber like a whip. Theron frowned, his violet eyes narrowing. Ancient, risky, but still bound by honor in the eyes of the houses. Lord Nixian studied Marcus for a long, silent moment, his gaze unreadable. You would fight Drelok himself, commander of colonial forces, with all eyes upon you? Marcus nodded, his voice steady. Yes, because he won't refuse, not in front of his men. Not if I strike at his honor, he'll think me a fool, and that will be his mistake. Isa's voice cut in, sharp as steel. No, it's madness, Marcus, she said, stepping closer, her cool hand gripping his arm. You took 10 lashes for me, you fought assassins for us, and now you think to face Drelok himself. Why must you throw yourself into fire again and again? Marcus turned to her, his voice rough but honest. Because I know fire, Isa. I've lived in it, I've bled in it, I know how to survive in it. And if stepping into it means giving you all a chance, then I'll walk straight into the flames. Her violet eyes searched his, desperate, furious, afraid. And in that moment the command center fell away, only her hand on his arm, only the faint scent of night-blooming flowers that clung to her. You are not Nixian, she whispered, her voice trembling. You are not bound by our oaths or wars. Why are you doing this? Marcus leaned closer, his words soft but heavy. Because someone has to, and because when I saw you in that square, I knew I couldn't just watch anymore. Her lips parted, 1,000 words dying before they could escape. Lord Nixian broke the silence, his tone final. Very well, he said. We will send word to Draylock, trial by combat in the courtyard at dawn. The hall erupted in whispers, warriors shifting, nobles murmuring. Theron and Kiros bowed their heads in reluctant agreement, but Issa remained frozen, her hand still clutching Marcus, her voice breaking through the noise. If you fall, this house falls with you, she said, her tone raw. And she stopped herself, words unspoken but clear in her eyes. Later, as the compound prepared, Marcus stood in the armory, adjusting the lightweight Nixian armor given to him. The plates were strong, flexible, but unfamiliar. He flexed his hands, gripping the staff weapon, remembering every strike, every scar, every drop of blood spilled in pits where survival meant creativity, not honor. And then she came. Issa, clad in her own battle dress, dark fabric reinforced with shining threads, elegance built for war. She moved closer, her hand steady as she adjusted his chest piece, her touch cool, lingering. Do not die for us, Marcus Kane, she whispered, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Live for us instead. Marcus caught her hand, pressed it against his chest, her skin cool against his heartbeat, his voice steady. I'm not fighting for politics or houses or laws, he said. I'm fighting for you. For a heartbeat, the war outside did not exist. Only the two of them. Her lips parted, her breath catching. She leaned closer, her forehead resting against his, her whisper trembling but fierce. Then come back to me, whatever it takes. And outside, beyond the compound walls, Draylock's fleet waited, crimson banners snapping. In the cold wind, the noose tight, the storm ready. Tomorrow blood would fall in the courtyard and only one man would walk away. The human who wouldn't kneel. The sun rose blood-red over the Nixian compound. Its light spilled across the central courtyard where hundreds had gathered. Colonial troops in rigid lines, their banners fluttering. Nixian warriors opposite, silent and resolute. Between them a ring of stone had been cleared. An arena ancient in its simplicity, a circle where pride and power would decide fate. Marcus Kane stood at its edge, armored in Nixian steel laced with human grit. The scars on his back burned beneath the plates, a reminder of lashes survived, of pain endured, of the moment he chose to stand. He gripped his staff weapon, its weight balanced, familiar, less a tool of war than of survival. Issa stood just beyond the circle, her violet eyes fixed on him, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles gleamed pale. Her lips moved without sound, a prayer, a plea, maybe both. Then Draylock entered, the crowd parting like prey before a predator. His crimson scales shone like fire in the morning light, twin blades gleaming in his hands. His every step radiated power, arrogance, certainty. He smiled at Marcus, a slow, poisonous curl of lips. You should have stayed in the pits, human, he hissed, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Here, you will learn your place. Marcus raised his staff, his voice steady, unflinching. I've known my place all my life, Commander, he said, each word sharp as stone. It's standing between tyrants like you and the people you try to break. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the words daring, defiant. Even Draylock's officers shifted uneasily, whispers running like cracks. Through ice, the commander snarled, his yellow eyes burning with fury. Enough, we end this now. The signal was given, and Draylock struck first, his blades a blur of crimson arcs, slashing with precision meant to kill in moments. Marcus deflected, his staff snapping against steel, sparks flying. The force drove him back, his arms burning, but his footing held. He had danced with beasts heavier, faster, more brutal, but never one with this much to prove. The fight turned into a storm. Steel clashing, staff cracking, the ring echoing with every strike. Draylock pressed his advantage, his blades flashing in brutal rhythm. Marcus moved differently, less trained, more instinct. each motion forged from years of improvisation. He ducked, rolled, struck, using Dreloc's fury against him. Every time the commander lunged, Marcus twisted, striking joints, edges, vulnerabilities a soldier never expected. The pit-born fighter against the commander of an empire. Blood marked the dirt, first from Marcus's arm cut deep by a slash he barely dodged, then from Dreloc's side where Marcus's staff had driven hard into scaled flesh. The crowd murmured louder now, the balance shifting. For the first time, a human had drawn blood from a colonial commander in open view. Fury consumed Dreloc, his strikes wild, desperate. "You are nothing," he roared. "A broken species clinging to scraps at the edge of space." Marcus blocked, his staff shuddering. Under the force, his voice raw but strong. "Maybe, but scraps can cut." With a roar, Dreloc overextended, both blades slashing down. Marcus twisted, staff rising in perfect timing, striking hard into the commander's ribs. The crack echoed. Dreloc staggered, one blade clattering to the dirt. Marcus seized the moment, driving forward, his staff, across the commander's throat, pinning him to the ground. The courtyard fell silent. Every warrior, every officer, every noble held their breath as Marcus loomed over the fallen commander. "Yield," Marcus demanded, his voice like iron. Dreloc's eyes blazed, his pride screaming louder than his pain. "Never," he spat, his voice ragged. Marcus pressed harder, his muscles screaming, the staff biting into scaled flesh. "Then die a coward," he growled, but Issa's voice cut through the silence, sharp, clear. "Marcus," she called, her tone commanding yet pleading. He turned his head slightly, meeting her violet eyes. Her gaze held him, steady and unbreakable. "You don't need to kill him," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "You've already won." The words struck deeper than Dreloc's blades ever could. Marcus's breath came ragged, his rage burning, his choice balanced, on a knife's edge. Then slowly, deliberately, he lifted the staff away. The commander gasped, choking on humiliation more than pain. "You live," Marcus said coldly, "but you kneel to justice now, not me." The silence shattered into chaos. Colonial officers whispered, some turning away from their commander, others already moving toward Issa's side. Nixian warriors roared their approval, pounding weapons against shields. And then, in a moment no one had expected, Lord Nixian himself stepped forward, his towering frame casting a long shadow. He knelt before Marcus, his voice thunderous. "House Nixian bows to the man who endured lashes for our blood and fought for our honor." Theron and Kairos followed, then every Nixian warrior, steel ringing against stone as they knelt in unison. Even some colonial officers lowered their heads, their loyalty to Dreloc already cracking. Marcus stood stunned, his staff still in hand, his heart pounding. "I didn't fight for this," he whispered almost to himself. Issa stepped forward, her hand slipping into his, her voice low but fierce. "No, you fought because it was right, and that is why they kneel." As the sun climbed higher, its light cutting through the courtyard, Marcus Kane stood alone in the circle, not as pit fighter, not as prisoner, not even as protector, but as proof. Proof that humanity was more than survival. Proof that courage could break chains, that honor could ignite rebellion. The human who wouldn't kneel had made others kneel instead. And somewhere deep inside, Marcus realized it was only the beginning.